I believe Blue Suede said it best when they said, I'm hooked on a feeling. And if college football isn't a feeling, I don't know what it is. What up, beasts? Welcome to What Dudes Want to Hear, post week 6 going into week 7, 6-7, if you will. But let's go ahead and cover what happened in that magical week 6, a week of upsets, a week of surprises, and just another week of college football. So, first game I want to talk about. Florida beat Texas? Texas went into the swamp and lost? Well, the Longhorns did. They called me crazy. They called me crazy when I picked Texas to go in there and lose. But alas, here we are. Looking at the Florida offense, this was the DJ Lagway we were expecting. He was able to look like himself again because A, they were able to run the ball, B, the defense held up, and C, the offensive line looked solid. Not to mention the star true freshman wide receiver that caught, I believe, over 100 yards of receiving yards. So incredibly impressive in the passing game. This is what we had been waiting to see from DJ Lagway this season. After that 5 interception game, a lot of people just wrote him off as, he looked great last season, but what's he going to do this season? Well, this season, he's just going to take down a team that A, made the playoff last year, and B, was in the SEC championship game last year as well. So props to DJ Lagway, Billy Napier, the entire staff for being able to pull that off. Florida's running back, Jaden Ball, was able to put up 107 yards and a touchdown. And for a team that not only this year, but last year and the years in the past that has relied on the run game, Billy Napier's offense needs a solid run game to be able to excel at the highest levels. That's what Jaden Ball and that offensive line were able to provide this last week. Again, this was a defense that Texas's defense specifically, they had been praised for their ability to stop the run. Coming into this year, people were wondering if teams were going to be able to score running points and running yards on Texas at all. But Florida just went right to work in a pretty charged environment that again was leaning in their favor, but still their ability to run it down their throat, that's exactly what you want to see as a Florida football team. And last week I brought up, Billy Napier, he must be the worst head coach to have. But Florida fans, what if I told you you had Nick Saban? And obviously you don't have Nick Saban. Nick Saban doesn't have that buzz cut that Billy Napier has. But Florida fans, you guys have Nick Saban once you guys already missed the playoff. So you may look great in the Pop-Tart Bowl this year, but you're not making the playoff. But at the end of the day, at least you have a great win to hang your hat on. And who knows, maybe Billy Napier sticks around for another year or not. Florida fans don't seem to be too excited about that prospect. But he at least earned himself another week. So let's look at the other side of this game. Texas could not run the ball. Their leading rusher was Arch Manning. And a lot of the media and a lot of talking heads and a lot of guys at the water cooler are quick to say, Arch just couldn't throw the ball. Arch couldn't get out of the pocket. He got sacked 7 times. And yes, he did get sacked a lot. Yes, it was a struggle for him to get out of the pocket. But the pocket is not his fault. The pocket is the offensive line's fault. And to add on top of that, Texas couldn't run the ball. The O-line was dominated. The running backs couldn't get going. And again, their top rusher was Arch Manning with 37 yards. This is a team that's used to running. And I don't care if you put Peyton Manning behind Texas' offensive line. He may win 1 or 2 more games than Arch has won this season, but he's not going to be winning them by the margins that we initially expected from an Arch Manning ran offense. If Arch Manning was so good, why didn't he start the games last year against over Quinn Ewers? Steve Sarkisian doesn't strike me as the kind of guy that's going to start a quarterback that isn't going to be able to fulfill the full team's potential. And so it's just a question. Obviously, hindsight is 2020, but it's something to think about with Arch Manning going on into the rest of the season. This wasn't an individual player that lost the game. Arch Manning didn't lose the game. Their left tackle didn't lose the game. Their left defensive edge didn't lose the game. This was a Texas team loss, and right now they're in wounded animal mode going into Red River, which will be an incredibly interesting game, as it always is. While this game was going on, there was a game going on in the Rose Bowl that I saw on the commercials, and I'm thinking, well, it's a get-right game for Penn State going to UCLA. It's a long travel, but, James Franklin, he'll be able to put his toes in the sand. They'll be able to hang out at West Coast Customs, maybe drive back to LA. Who knows? And again, this is a game you expect to see on the highlight reel of the other games. Man, Drew Aller completed a 75-yard touchdown pass. Penn State's defense, pick six. But then you're watching Florida versus Texas. You're watching the other games on the slate, and you see that Penn State, they're down at halftime. Did Penn State run out their JV team? Was this a make-a-wish game for Nico Iamaleava? And surely you're thinking, varsity will have to come out after the half. And it looks like Penn State's offense did come out after the half, but Penn State unfortunately could not stop Molasses in December on Saturday. If you're a Penn State fan, at least Drew Aller still thinks you have a chance to make the playoff. Personally, I don't. However, he does. And for James Franklin, he has nowhere else to go but up. This is unprecedented territory for Penn State. Penn State doesn't lose these types of games, except for on Saturday, October the 4th. So rough go for the Nittany Lions. This is, watching from an outside perspective, it kind of looks like your friend challenges to a middle schooler to a race, and the middle schooler wins. And you want to be happy for the middle schooler. Don't get me wrong. He just put on an incredible performance. And also, you're a little bit embarrassed to be friends with the guy who just lost to the middle schooler. Penn State plays against Northwestern this week, and Northwestern has the opportunity to do one of the funniest things in all of college football, but we'll see what actually happens up in Happy Valley this Saturday. Rounding out the nightcap for Saturday, Miami beat Florida State 28-22. This gives Miami the state of Florida championship for the year, which they also won last year, and it proved they can win on the road. We haven't really seen Miami away from home much this season, but it's good to see that they're able to still get it done even in a toxic environment. And so watching this game, if Miami gets off to a fast start, it is a difficult team to play catch up against, especially with the guys they have on the defensive line. Their secondary is able to cover wide receivers this year, which is really nice. And the final score made it seem a lot closer than it actually was. That 28-22, it didn't look like that until the fourth quarter. And Florida State only had 3 points on the board until the fourth quarter. Looking at this game from a Miami offensive perspective, Carson Beck was surgical. He passed for 4 touchdowns, and Miami won big on the turnover battle. They forced 2 interceptions and a fumble, and it's hard to lose a game whenever you're up 3-0 turnover-wise. So looking at Miami's remaining schedule, the only games I'd worry about are against Louisville, at SMU, and at Pitt. And none of those teams, except really Pitt, have played up to standard for this season. So the ACC genuinely is Miami's to lose at this point. We could see some interesting players, like we could see Virginia in it at the end of the year. We're probably not going to see North Carolina in it at the end of the year, especially with the talks going on about their head coaching situation. But, Miami looks to be in a very solid spot. And honestly, if Ohio State didn't exist, they'd be the number 1 team in the country. That's not crazy to say. And with this game, Florida State was down early, but they looked good in the fourth quarter. I got to give them that at the end of the game. They showed the grit and fight that really they lacked all of last year. Whenever you go 2-10, your team doesn't have much fight. But this team, even when down, even when faced with adversity, it was a team that looked like they still wanted to be in this game, a team that still cared about their position in the state of Florida and their position in the state of college football in general. And while it is a tough loss for them, I wouldn't call them a playoff team, but I'd expect to see them in the Pop-Tart Bowl. This team honestly reminds me a lot of Miami last year in the sense that they're able to compete with pretty solid teams, but a lot of times just going down the stretch, they can't quite make it. And that is not a knock on Florida State's team, specifically compared to last year. I think Florida State's doing a great job, and I see Florida State's ability to excel with this Gus Malzahn offense. With Mike Norvell at the helm, I think Mike Norvell is a great head coach. I think we'll just have to see what they're able to do in recruiting this year, what they're able to do in the transfer portal this year. And if they have to rely on the transfer portal again, that does create an element of chaos for that team. But Florida State sometimes seems to be able to thrive on chaos. Last year, not so much, but this year, it definitely seems like they're able to explore it a little bit more. And again, I think Florida State's in a good position. I just think Miami's in a better position. They have a guy who, I said it earlier in the season, should win the Heisman. So Miami looks great. Florida State, don't count them out just yet. They still have a ways to go. There's still a lot of football to be played this season. So not surprised with the result, but I am happy for both teams. I think this was possibly the best possible situation for both teams since a team did have to win and lose at the end of the game, at the end of the day. So again, that wasn't the only other important game that happened on Saturday. Alabama beat Vanderbilt. And again, this was a game that was closer than the final score indicated. Without Vanderbilt's turnovers, they really had a solid chance to stay in the game. Diego Pavia, he was running the offense well. They were able to get the run game established. They were able to establish some quarterback runs. But this was honestly just a tale of Alabama getting their get back. Last year, they roll into Nashville, ranked number 1 in the nation, and then all of a sudden, 3 hours later, there are no goalposts to be seen except for at the bottom of the river in downtown Nashville. And so, honestly, this game reminded me a lot of The Dark Knight Rises. Vanderbilt would essentially be playing the role of Bane in this movie, while Alabama is Batman. And while Bane is at one point able to break Batman, I mean, he literally basically breaks his back and every other bone in his body. You can never count out Bruce Wayne. You can never count out Batman. And it's not called The Dark Knight because that was the last movie. This is The Dark Knight Rises. And The Dark Knight rose again in Tuscaloosa. And while Bama, I think they're on a straight path to be able to make the playoff, I'd like to see some more wins for Vanderbilt. It's good for the conference. It's good for all of college football whenever you can see an underdog like that kind of give you hope in some of those more difficult situations. And I'm just really proud of Vanderbilt, the way they've been able to perform this year. So great on Alabama, great on Vanderbilt. Overall, great game all around. This next game that I'm about to talk about, this was a game that came out of left field for me. And Vegas saw this coming, but I did not. I'm talking about Cincinnati beating Iowa State on Saturday. Cincinnati came into this game as 1.5-point favorites, and I thought this was a lock. I thought this was free money. Thankfully, I'm not a betting man, but if I was, I would have bet on this game, and I did not lose money at the end of the day, but I also didn't gain any money. Iowa State never seemed to be in this game. This was the opposite of the last game in the sense that the final score did make it look closer than it actually was. Rocco Becht, Iowa State's quarterback, boy, he took a brutal hit. He got his bell rung early in the first half, and he stayed in the game, which I respect. I got to respect Rocco Becht in that moment. Iowa State has a lot of fight, but Cincinnati, they've looked good. And Cincinnati's only loss this season is to Nebraska. So don't be surprised if you see them in Dallas at the end of the year. Am I predicting them to be in Dallas at the end of the year in that Big 12 championship at Jerry World? Not necessarily. All I'm saying is don't count them out just yet. Finally, Virginia beat Louisville. Again, this was a game I thought Louisville was going to take pretty easily. Virginia might just be a legit team. That's another team that we could be talking about in conference championship play later in the season. So, very interesting games, both Cincinnati and Virginia coming out as winners, specifically that I did not expect. All right, so that's covering all of the games from last week. But this week, I was actually given a fan submission as to a segment to include on the show. So I want to shout out Tyler Herndon for giving me this idea. And he wanted to know, Ethan, who are your favorite non-quarterback players? Well, Tyler, that is a great question. So we're going to be going through all of the position groups, and we're going to be talking about which players have excelled and maybe done some things that have stood out on the screen. So my first guy, offensive lineman, I'm going to have Caden Proctor from the University of Alabama. This is the only lineman I've seen all season to score an almost touchdown. And I'm not talking about quarterback fumbles and the big man just starts running toward the end zone. No, I'm talking about Kalen DeBoer drew up a screenplay out wide for Caden Proctor to have blockers on, and this play wasn't a fluke. He was put by the sideline, and Ty Simpson dotted it up to him, and he ran through 4 Georgia defenders on a screen pass, which sitting on the couch doesn't even look easy from here. He's had 1 penalty and 1 sack all year. Incredible play from Caden Proctor, most likely going to be a first-round pick in this upcoming draft. So Caden Proctor, favorite O-lineman. Favorite wide receiver, obvious pick, got to go Jeremiah Smith from Ohio State. He is the number 1 guy teams have to game plan against, and he still gets open. He's a true sophomore, and he runs like a gazelle, but guys, he's built like The Rock. Since teams have to guard him so heavily, he allows his boys to eat. He allows Julian Sand to dice it up to a guy like Carnell Tate. He allows their run game to get going. Without Jeremiah Smith, we wouldn't be able to see the level of offense that we've seen from Ohio State this year, and it's not just because he's catching the ball. He allows other guys to get open, which at the end of the day, as a guy who likes to put the team first, I love to see players like this not going for his own accolades. This is a guy that genuinely just wants his football team to win, and I have to respect that. So give me Jeremiah Smith for my favorite wide receiver so far this season. My favorite edge rusher has to be Ruben Bain Jr. from Miami. This guy's built like a refrigerator, and he moves like a microwave oven. He's had a couple of sacks on the year, and he's been at Miami since 2023. And if you remember Miami from the past couple of years, their defense has been pretty, for lack of a better term, cheeks. But has been a part of setting that defensive culture. He's been a part of having to grow that Miami team in a defensive sense. And this is a team now that can win with their defense. Sure, they have Carson Beck at quarterback. Sure, their wide receiver room, looks like they found a couple of aliens from Mars. But Miami, they wouldn't be in the position they are without that defensive line, and specifically with Ruben Bain Jr. So he's my favorite edge rusher of the season so far. For running back, got to go Ahmad Hardy out of Missouri. This guy is a big reason why Missouri is still undefeated. He hasn't had a fumble throughout his entire college career. That is insane. And genuinely, he doesn't care where the defenders are. He will run through them anyway. And he doesn't run like a Cam Scadaboo where, he has to get going. Immediately, he can come out of the break, start like a sprinter looking like Noah Lyles and Usain Bolt out there. And he has rushed for at least 100 yards every game this season. And while Missouri's schedule hasn't been the most difficult, sure, they've played Kansas. Sure, they've had a little bit of SEC play against South Carolina. Man, Ahmad Hardy has a potential to really prove who he is on Saturday, so I'm excited to see his matchup against Alabama, how he's able to attack that rush defense. So give me Ahmad Hardy as my favorite running back to watch this season so far. As far as tight end, got to go Jaron Kanak from the University of Oklahoma. So Jaron Kanak, this is a guy that switched from linebacker to tight end just this season. And while he has had some drops, there was a big drop in the Michigan game where he could have had a touchdown. He had some drops in the open field. He's able to find gaps, and he's able to find gaps from a defensive perspective. A lot of times when you're watching guys who have only played offense their entire life, they're just going through the motions, trying to find, that specific route. But Jaron Kanak, he's able to read these defenses and go and find those weak spots are. And he's been one of Mateer's biggest targets in the open field. So give me Jaron Kanak. He's able to make those explosive plays, and he's able to catch the ball when guys are right down his throat. So very fun player to watch. Look for him on Saturday against Texas and Red River Shootout. Up next, linebacker, we got John Vaughns from UCLA. And when I first read this guy's name, I thought, man, this guy is straight out of the Key and Peele East-West Bowl skit. However, this guy's legit. He has over 50 tackles on the season, and he was able to get behind the line against Penn State. And whenever you lead an upset like that, whenever your name is John Vaughns and the announcer gets go, John Vaughns, that's worth a nod in my book. So give me John Vaughns from UCLA at linebacker. At DB, I got Amaris Brown from UNLV. This guy has 4 interceptions on the season, and he has 2 touchdowns on the season. And, if you're a math guy like me, 50% of his interceptions have resulted in a touchdown. He's a big hitter. He has a couple of sacks. So interesting guy to watch in the G5. And this is a UNLV team that will probably make the conference game for the Mountain West. So keep your eye on that defensive backfield up in Las Vegas at Allegiant Field. And finally, going to go special teamer. kick returner, Caden Wetjen out of Iowa. So not only did he have a 95-yard punt return touchdown versus UMass, this guy has only returned punts and kicks 14 times for the season, but he has totaled 465 yards. That stat says everything you need to know about this guy. That white boy can run. He makes me happy seeing those little white legs going across the field. So give me Caden Wetjen from Iowa as my favorite special teamer so far for this college football season. So going into this Saturday, you need to know the dual screen setup that you're going to want to have on your TV. And we're not even just talking about Saturday this week. We're also going to be talking about some Friday night ball because South Florida travels to Denton, Texas to take on the University of North Texas in the Mean Green. Whichever wins this team will probably have to go through Memphis and could make the playoff. I genuinely believe whichever team makes it out of the American Conference with teams like Navy, with teams like Memphis, USF, UNT, these teams that have looked exceptional this season, they will probably get that last conference championship position in the playoff. Currently, UNT is favored by 1.5 points, and crazy stat of the week regarding this game. UNT quarterback, Drew Messamaker, he has thrown 0 interceptions in 5 games. That is insane. And he has over 1,000 yards passing. Incredible stat. UNT is undefeated. And while USF, they have had big wins. They beat Miami. They beat Boise State. They didn't beat Miami. They beat Florida in the Swamp. They did not beat Miami. And that's why I'm going to take the Mean Green. I have a good feeling about UNT's ability to limit turnovers, and this is a far travel game for USF, so I think UNT is going to be well rested. I think UNT is going to be locked in, so give me the Mean Green in this game. Going into Saturday, during the 11 a.m. slate, turning on your TV, what you're going to want to have on that big one, you are going to want to have Alabama at Missouri. Now, this is a potential letdown spot for Alabama. This is very similar to last year when they beat Georgia at home and then had to go on the road to Vanderbilt and lost. And while Missouri isn't a team of chumps, this game will be close. And Ty Simpson, I think he'll be able to dice it up enough to be able to get through that Missouri defense. So go ahead and give me Alabama in this game. On your other screen for Saturday morning, you're going to want to have Ohio State at Illinois. So right now, both teams are ranked, and Ohio State is still favored by more than 2 touchdowns. And while Illinois is backed into a corner, specifically after that Indiana loss, we could see some motion from them. Am I expecting to see a lot of motion from them? Not exactly. So give me Ohio State to still get the win. I think this could be an interesting game up in the third quarter. Don't think it's going to be an interesting game in the fourth quarter, though. So give me Ohio State. At 2:30 p.m., we have one of the best rivalries in all of college football, people. We have the Red River Shootout. Not the Red River Rivalry, the Red River Shootout, as it should be named for all of time. And so looking at this line, at the beginning of the week, Texas was given 2.5 points. But that line shifted to Texas 1.5, and then it shifted to OU 1.5, and now it shifted back to Texas 1.5. And the big storyline in this game is John Mateer going to play. And last night on Oklahoma's scouting report for the game, their injury report, John Mateer was listed as probable, which is incredibly interesting considering he had surgery just only right over 2 weeks ago. He would be playing in this football game 17 days off of a thumb surgery in his hand, and we've heard that he's been able to grip the football a little bit, and we still don't know if he's playing. Oklahoma has been practicing in their indoor facility all week, despite it being pretty nice weather up in Norman, and while Texas didn't look good against Florida, gosh, I hate this spot for OU. If John Mateer plays, I believe Oklahoma will have the juice that allows them to beat Texas. But I don't think they're going to beat Texas. I think Texas wins this game. They're backed up against the wall. This is a game that Steve Sarkisian loves to play. In 2 of the last 3 matchups, he's beaten them by over a combined score of 80 points. Yeah, while I think Oklahoma's defense is scary, while I think Texas's offense has been about as friendly as a trick-or-treater on Halloween, At the end of the day, I can't shake the feeling that I think Texas is going to win this game. This is a game that no matter what the teams look like coming into the season, rankings don't matter. Point spreads don't matter. What matters is what happens in the 60 minutes that those players are on the field. And I just believe that Texas is going to win this game. So give me the Longhorns. The other game you should have on at 2:30, though, that's going to be Indiana at Oregon. Now, this game will have a lot of juice. College game day is going to be there, and Oregon is favored by over a touchdown. And I'm interested to see how Oregon's quarterback, Dante Moore, does against a strong Indiana defense. However, I still expect Oregon to win the game. Dan Lanning's coaching is too solid, and we haven't necessarily seen Indiana be able to take that step up playing on the road against those elite teams. Does it happen this week? I think it has the potential to. I believe this will be a close game. However, I don't think Coach Sig and the boys have enough juice just yet to be able to get the win over in Eugene, so give me Oregon. And then during the nightcap, we're going to have Georgia at Auburn on that main screen, and right now, I am not confident in Georgia's defensive line. We're used to seeing Georgia's defensive line having guys drafted in the first round, but their defensive line just doesn't look like it has the juice for that right now. This will be the first time Auburn has played at home in 4 weeks, and I believe this atmosphere will be electric. And if Cam Coleman can just make a few plays, if Jackson Arnold just has a little bit of extra time in the pocket, I believe Auburn will win this game. So I'm going to take Auburn. I'm going to take Auburn on the points. Give me Auburn. Last but not least, in this nightcap game, we have Michigan at USC. And honestly, I still feel good about Jaden Maiava. And teams are struggling to adjust to travel this season, but I think that will be a non-factor for Michigan. Michigan's ground and pound offense, Bryce Underwood's ability to run it while ability to sling it too. I think this game could turn into a shootout, but I don't think it will. I believe this game is going to be a low-scoring game. Michigan's defense is going to be able to suffocate USC, while USC will probably have some big plays, which, that's just commonplace for USC at this point. Michigan will most likely take the cake in this game, so give me Michigan to win it. And last but not least, we have a big after dark game this week. We have Arizona State at Utah. And so this is a huge game for the Big 12. And with an Arizona State win, that keeps them in the Big 12 championship race. But a win for Utah gives the Utes a confidence boost going into a somewhat difficult Big 12 season. They have to play at BYU, and the rest of their schedule isn't full of chumps either. At the end of this day, I like the spot for Utah. I don't think Utah gets slapped at home twice this season. So go ahead and give me Utah in this game. Guys, we are in for a big slate of college football this weekend. As I end the show, I want to thank you all so much for listening. I appreciate the support. Guys, be safe this weekend. This is a big one. Keep in touch. Stay tuned into your television. It would be a crime to leave your couch this weekend. So, thank you guys for listening. God bless. We'll see you Saturday.